With that background, talk about doping. What is doping? How do we define it? We see the term very often. Basically, it means, as you see there, use of drugs in an attempt to enhance sporting performance. But it's much, much more than that, as we will see. The word itself actually comes from, there's debates about the origin of the word, but it seems to be a word from Afrikaans, the Afrikaans language in South Africa, an alcoholic drink that was used in ceremonial dances by some of the natives there, and the name sort of stuck there, and that's basically what it means. But the definition of doping is much broader than a simple one-sentence definition. The International Olympic Committee defines doping in ways that you see here. It's multifaceted. The presence of a prohibited substance, or its metabolites or markers in the body. Well, that's pretty clear. You find anabolic steroid in the urine. Clearly, that's doping. So there's a list, and we'll mention that in a little bit. Prohibited substances. Exactly what substances are prohibited? Notice the second thing, methods. Prohibited methods are prohibited. What do we mean by prohibited methods? Well, all kinds of shenanigans have gone on over the years. For example, the Russian athletes, especially the women athletes, back during the Cold War years, it was well known, even at the time, when nobody could prove it, nobody would confess, their female athletes were given anabolic steroids. And they would escape detection by being catheterized prior to being tested. So they would remove urine from the bladder, and before they urinated, so you would basically remove the evidence. Catheterization, in other words, is prohibited. Refusing or failing without compelling justification to submit for a sample. If you are required to provide a sample of urine, say, or sometimes blood, and you refuse, that's prima facie evidence of doping. You can be accused just on the basis of refusal. And that's especially true the higher up you go in the athletic world. If you're a world-class athlete, what they technically define as elite athletes, you better, or you're done for. You better submit. And they know the rules. In fact, there's what they call out-of-competition testing, that those who are in the elite category have to subject themselves to, which means you can be on vacation, not, taking a holiday, not being engaged in competitive sport, but if you're in that category, they can knock on your door and say, provide us with a urine sample. And you better provide it. No excuses. That's the last one down there too. In fact, you have to let the officials know where you're going to be. Doesn't matter. You're going to be on your honeymoon. Doesn't matter. You have to let them know. where you're going to be, and when. That's how tough the rules are today. Tampering with samples is a violation. Even attempting to tamper. Trafficking. You don't have to be using the drugs. If you're engaged in trafficking a prohibited substance, you are subject to the rules. Even if you administer a prohibited substance or attempt to administer a prohibited substance, you're also violating the rules. Well, what are these drugs that are banned? There are whole lists of them, and I give you the up-to-date web addresses. You can go look at them. They're pretty straightforward. They are categorized by the IOC into drugs that are prohibited at all times, and then drugs which are prohibited under certain circumstances. There's another category. But these are drugs that are prohibited all the time, even in out-of-competition situations. Anabolic steroids, top of the list. Various peptides, luteinizing hormone, HCG. That only applies to males, by the way. Growth hormone, insulin-like growth factor. Insulin is interesting. Insulin is on the banned list. Well, you say, what if you're a diabetic? Well, if you are a diabetic, and there are world-class athletes who do take insulin, they have to report that. They have to let the officials know. There has to be medical documentation, and that has to be supervised. They can use their insulin under those circumstances, of course. EPO, that's a big one, erythropoietin. Beta-2 agonists are on the list. Well, you say, what if the athlete is asthmatic? Like, the young kid back in the Munich games. What if, he took ephedrine, and the beta-2 agonists have come out in the years since then. Beta-2 agonists are banned unless you're an asthmatic who can justify that you're taking them. Why beta-2 agonists? Beta-2 agonists also can have an anabolic effect. And so for that reason they are banned, unless you have a documented medical reason for taking them. Antiestrogens. Tamoxifen, for example, is banned. Why tamoxifen? Yes. Well, athletes who might be using anabolic steroids may have some evidence of feminization, because you get gynecomastia, you get some effects like that, some because of estrogenic effects as well. So they might use an anti-estrogen to make it not so obvious that they're taking an anabolic steroid. That's prohibited. Masking agents, diuretics. Those are prohibited because back in the old days, the athletes used to try to get away with circumventing the urine testing by using diuretics. So they'd pass a lot of urine, and the drug would be so diluted that it wouldn't be detected. Now, that's banned. If you find diuryl, hydrodiuryl in your urine, you better have a very good reason for having it there, because it's a banned substance under all conditions. Probenecid. Why probenecid? Anybody know? What does probenecid do?
Used for gout.
Used for gout. Why is it used for gout?
Increases uric acid secretion.
Increases uric acid output through the urine. But probenecid also blocks the it inhibits renal excretion of many other compounds, such as penicillin. Remember penicillin? Probenecid? In the early days, they used to use it. So that's banned. Then you have substances that are prohibited only in competition, such as amphetamines, cocaine. I guess you can be a cocaine addict, but don't get caught using it in competition. Opioids, narcotics, marijuana, glucocorticoids. It's okay to use them, but don't let them find that in your system. I don't know exactly what the cutoff is, but a certain period prior to competition. And then you have some substances that are prohibited only in certain sports, such as alcohol. Interestingly, there are limits to how much alcohol you can have, but quite liberal considering. But any trace of alcohol in certain sports is enough to disqualify you, such as, what do you call that, biathletes, you know? What are biathletes? Skiing and shooting, right? You don't want to shoot somebody else, one of your teammates, for example. Some sports like that, or beta blockers, because beta blockers, one of their effects is to inhibit tremors. So if you have a slight tremor, like you're an archer, not good to have a tremor, and some archer might be willing to use a beta blocker for that effect. So it's outlawed in certain sports. So you have those categories that you can look up on the web pages. You ask, thank you for asking, what about caffeine? You didn't see caffeine at all on there. Actually, caffeine, does that mean athletes can drink as much coffee as they want? Take as much Red Bull as they want? Yeah, they can. The history of caffeine in the prohibited list is sort of interesting because caffeine actually was on the banned list for a long time. And then it was dropped from the list in 2004, and it's still not on the list. It has been moved to what's called, what do they call it? The monitoring program. It's one of the drugs or substances that's on a monitoring program, which means basically the IOC and other governing bodies we'll talk about are monitoring the situation to see whether there is any effect on athletic performance with caffeine. So if they find caffeine in your urine, that's okay. They won't disqualify you for that. But they might keep a record of it to see if there's a trend there. And it might be put back on in the future. So you can take 5-Hour Energy, which has quite a bit of caffeine in it, and apparently they won't call you on it. Yes?
Could you use caffeine then for its diuretic effects in order to produce that result?
Well, I suppose you could. There's no rule against it.
Dr. Abramson, how about Sudafed?
Sudafed, I think, don't quote me on this, but I believe it's on the list. Ephedrine, Sudafed. But I have to go look. The list, it's quite a lengthy list. Maybe somebody wants to look that up over the break. Yeah, we got to take a break, right?